What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Bunnyoperator here. The scorching heat of summer is upon us, and as promised to many of you, I said that I'd release a Rattlecan tutorial video once it got to summer and a little bit warmer. Note that you can paint whenever you want, and I've done so in winter before, but the colder weather does cause the paint to take a little bit longer to dry and sometimes stays tacky for a little while. So I suppose technically you could do it in a heated garage if you wanted to. The warmer temperature just helps the paint to adhere and cure properly. Today we'll be covering three basic patterns: M81 Woodland, Multicam Tropic, which is my favorite, and good old-fashioned Snakeskin pattern. I personally think that with these three basic patterns, they should give you plenty of knowledge on how to paint any pattern that you desire. I've included chapters so you can go ahead and skip to the pattern that you want, but be sure to start with the materials and considerations chapter so that you can understand what you're doing. Additionally, more detailed information is listed in the video description, so be sure to visit there as well. Before we get into it, I'd like to highlight a few of my buddies from the industry and the discount codes that I have with them. Links are also in the video description, so again, be sure to check that out. For holsters, mag carriers, and other accessories, visit lesconcealment.com. I am an affiliate with them, and anything that you purchase using my code BUNNY provides me with a little bit of kickback to help me fund my antics on the channel. I am testing a few of their new products and will be putting out a separate video focusing specifically on LES products, as well as the update to how I carry and the philosophies behind my carry style, so stay tuned for that video later. For M-LOK grips and accessories, visit SlateBlackIndustries.com and use code BUNNY. The code not only provides you with a discount, but also helps fund my channel. Slate Black Industries is run by Henry and Josh over at the 9-Hole Reviews YouTube channel. They are solid dudes putting out high quality educational content to help guide you and your journey through the firearms world. If you have not yet subbed to their channel, please go over there and support those super legit dudes. For the remainder of these discount codes, I don't receive any kickback for them. I simply have the codes to give you a price break and also to help promote my friends in the industry. For high quality firearms and accessories, visit Revival Defense and use code BUNNY. Revival Defense carries many of the parts that I use for my current and for future builds that I'm planning. If you've seen it on my channel or on any of my social media pages, Revival Defense likely has the products. Additionally, Revival Defense is working on a lot of products and testing on the hush hush, so follow along Revival Defense's social media pages for updates on those. For soft goods such as helmet covers, plate carrier supporting equipment like cummerbunds, placards, custom equipment, and anything else you can imagine in the soft goods world, visit A&A Tactical and use code BUNNY13 in all caps. I've been using A&A products for a long time now, and if you didn't know, A&A also makes the CQ Bunny that's been featured on my channel and on my social media pages. That particular product was an idea that I came up with, and I pitched it over to Austin at A&A Tactical, and he said he could do it, so we experimented, and lo and behold, the CQ Bunny was born. I'll link that video in the upper corner, and feel free to check out the product page as well. And lastly, Distaste Apparel. Distaste is a startup clothing company run by one of my good buddies. Head over his site and his social media pages and see if there's anything that suits your style. If you see anything you like, use code BUNNY10 in all caps for a price break on some of the products. Let's get into some of the materials that you will need in order to complete your paint job. Painter's tape, paint colors of your choice. We'll get into the specific ones I used for this video shortly. Pattern mediums such as stencils, foliage that you have lying around the yard, netting for a specific type of pattern, or really anything to mimic as close as possible to the pattern that you want. And of course, any of the supporting equipment or items that you may need, such as a giant piece of cardboard or rope or wire to hang your rifle if you desire to do it that way. I tend to just lay my equipment over a cardboard, or in this case, I use split trash bags, whatever you feel like you need for your environment. Some things to consider before we begin. If your equipment has any type of slick finish or clear coat over it, the paint may not adhere properly. I've seen this on items like stainless steel barrels or certain plastics that have a sheen to it. In general, if it's shiny, then it probably has some type of coating on it. You may want to take a bit of sandpaper to rough up the areas a bit, just so the paint can adhere a little bit better. If your equipment is oily or greasy, this may also prevent the paint from sticking properly. For those areas, use some type of simple green or alcohol to clean it up. You don't have to get too crazy, just wipe it down a little bit and you'll be good. For the painter's tape, use it to cover anything that you don't want painted. I do recommend that you cover any areas of ingress, such as mag wells, your barrel opening, muzzle devices, especially if you intend to run a can, your actions, exposed carriers like on AKs, triggers, and anything else that you might think will affect the ergonomics or the feel as you're using them. For your optics, be sure to tape the glass. Any directional markings, indicators, or numbers such as your turrets, serial numbers for future warranty in case you need it, basically anything that you might need later or might need to use later. Another thing to note is that paint won't adhere to rubber, but it's okay to paint over the rubber because it'll just rub off anyways and be fine later on. No, this does not mean you tape the logos of the brand or manufacturer. Nobody cares about your BCM logo. Just paint that shit, pimpin'. It should be noted that you do not have to follow my instructions to a T. One example is I tend to not like hard lines and prefer softer blended patterns. You might prefer the hard lines, and that's okay. You do you, boo. Simply use this tutorial as a guide and let your imagination go wild. Lastly, have fun. Your lines and patterns don't need to be perfect. The paint doesn't need to be perfect. You're going to mess them up with wear over time. The paint will mix with dirt and gunk from the environment, and the pattern will just continue to evolve with use. But if you are the type or you want that particular setup to have a perfect near OEM-like scheme or pattern, you should probably seek out something like Cerakote. Actually, you know what? Better yet, check out my homies over at Redacted Concepts for that particular job. They pretty much OEM for a lot of the companies out there, and their work is OEM tier. Redacted Concepts does have one of my builds currently. It's my Bunny 15 based on an ADM 4 lower, and I look forward to seeing how that one turns out, so stay tuned for that later. Once you have all of your materials set up, let's get to the painting portion. For all three of the patterns in this video, I use three main base colors: brown, green, and tan. Normally I use Rust-oleum's Camo line of spray paint, so that would specifically be Camo Earth Brown, Camo Deep Forest Green, and Camo Khaki. For the M81 Woodland pattern, you will also need to add Rust-oleum Camo Black. For Multicam Tropic, there are 3 shades of green in there, and we already have 1 green from the Rust-oleum, which is already pretty dark, so you should be going lighter. I particularly chose Krylon brand, Woodland Light Green, and Gloss Jungle Green. You can choose whatever greens you want so long as they are lighter than the dark green and have some form of a jungle yellow greenish type tint to it. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the actual painting portion of the video. M81 Woodland, here we go. Notice that there are 4 basic colors: brown, green, tan, and black. Note that the pattern uses both large and small size shapes. And to mimic that, I will be using both the large and small pattern stencils shown here. Notice that M81 is a quote-unquote hardline pattern, which means each color is distinctly segregated. As noted earlier, I don't favor that, so I didn't do it that way. But if you like that style, then all you need to do is either hold the stencils tighter to the objects before you spray, or you can use sticker type stencils between each paint coat. Of course, you have to coordinate the order of which pattern or colors you'll be painting, and I'll leave that to you to figure out. You'll notice that this Magpul handguard was from a previous project and already has some snakeskin camo on here. Some basic tan, brown, and green, so the base colors that I noted earlier. I'm going to put that down and clear out the area. And here's the 2 base coats, the green and the brown. And we'll start off with the brown coat. Just nice simple layer. And now the green coat. On to the first set of stencils. We'll start with the large to mimic the larger patterns. Just randomly spray them, no particular order. I'm starting off on green on the brown side, then on the green base I'll use the brown. Now you see what that looks like. Moving on to the smaller stencils. This is to mimic the smaller patterns on M81, starting off with Khaki. Again, just random coats. No particular locations because the stencils would do their job. And that's what this looks like from here. And reposition the stencil Break out the black. Again, just random sporadic hits. Pull the stencil, and that's what it looks like now. This is the point when you start to touch up areas that have too much exposure of one color. You see there's an abundance of tan. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more brown. Notice that I'm trying to cover as much of the tan as I can. And alternating colors, we're going to the green. Moving the stencils around this time to make it a little bit more random. And that's pretty much it for the baseline. I'm content with this, but if you want to go ahead and adjust the pattern yourself, then go for it. Whatever makes you happy. Of course, this is a small piece of equipment. A larger piece of equipment with more surface area would probably show the patterns a lot more spread out. And to show you that, I'm going to go ahead and touch with a little bit of brown, just to kind of mask the overabundance of green. And there he goes. Looks much better. And there's the completed product for M81 Woodland. Multicam Tropic, here we go. And here we have in front of us a sample for Multicam Tropic. Notice that there are 3 different shades of green here, and within those shades of green, the other greens tend to blend in with the pattern lines. Unlike M81 from before, this pattern is more soft lines, which is my preference. I think that the patterns tend to blend better, especially when looking at objects from a distance, but it also retains some of the hard lines. And in my opinion, and from my experience from painting these patterns, it seems to be more natural for Rattlecan to follow along this style of blended hard and soft lines. In addition to the 3 different types of greens, you see brown and you see tan. Going back to the greens, we already have the Rust-oleum Camo green, and I've opted for Krylon brands for the 2 remaining greens. The first one being Woodland Light Green. In my opinion, this is mandatory. It's a yellowish green and very closely mimics the lighter and the yellowish green that's found on Multicam Tropic. I did have a difficult time finding a lighter and brighter green to offset the existing Rust-oleum and the Krylon Woodland Light Green, and I ended up trying Krylon's Gloss Jungle Green. Now, it's not normally my preference to use gloss of any type for a camo pattern, but this seems to have worked out. Just note that the gloss nature of it does have an additive to give the paint a little bit of shine, so you might have to let it dry and cure a little bit longer than the other paints. I actually think it gives the finished product a nice, decent pop. And what I did to help mitigate the excess of shine was I went over it with the other colors, and it seems to have blended very well without providing the excess of shine. With that explanation out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the actual painting portion. Alright, let's go ahead and turn this over to the other side and begin the MCT. We're going to start off with the base coats, just like before. Earth brown. And here's the green. And we're going to get some of the camo khaki and use the large stencils over. Just like before, random locations, not a big deal. Make sure to give adequate coverage. Just a smidge more there. And moving on to the Woodland Light Green from Krylon. You'll see the differences in the green shades here. And immediately you can tell the difference there. Here's a close-up for you to see the differences between the greens. You see how the lines start to blend a little bit. And moving on to the gloss jungle green. You'll immediately see how bright this green is, but don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and subdue it shortly. We're just getting the base coats down. You don't want to use too much of that. You see how much the jungle green pops in comparison to the other greens. Alright, we're going to start the blending process now. We're going to start with earth brown again. Taking the small stencils. And you can use large if you want to. Whatever you want. Just sporadic hits, random locations. And the stencils will do their job. Going back to the deep forest green. And start focusing on blending in over the lighter jungle green. Or any other color that pops too much. And moving back to the woodland light green. This should be the blending coat here. Just sporadically spraying all over the place here. And that should kind of blend all the colors together. You see how much the jungle green and the light forest green kind of blend together? That really mimics Multicam Tropic on how the different shades of green tend to blend together. And of course you see the woodland here on the other side in comparison. And there you have it, the Multicam Tropic paint job is complete. Onto the snakeskin pattern. You can see that I'm using my buddy's hunting rifle here as a sample. I apologize ahead of time for the lighting conditions. I did this earlier in the day. You see the red section of the rifle there. My buddy is using a stencil to apply a particular logo to the rifle itself. And what we've done initially was painted red, which was the color you wanted. Allowed it to dry, then applied the stencil before I began my portion of the painting process. Okay, we're going to start off with the base coats. That's earth brown first. We're just going to go large stripe patterns alternating. And then moving on to the green. And periodically check your tape to make sure that it's still applied. For some reason the painter's tape didn't really stick here. My guess is because there was some type of shiny finish on the scope. But that's okay, the paint did stick properly. And here is a still frame example of that base pattern. Now onto the actual snakeskin. We're going to use fishnet, or in this case, soccer ball netting. And you're going to alternate here. Whatever was brown, you're going to hit with green. Whatever was green, you're going to hit with brown. Nothing too crazy here. The closer and tighter the netting, the more prevalent the pattern. The looser the netting and the further away you spray, the lighter the pattern is going to be. So do whatever you need to do to get the desired effect that you want. Now onto the brown over the green. Once you're done with that, turn the rifle over and repeat on the other side. That's it for the snakeskin camo pattern. Of course, you can always add other colors to suit your environment or your desires. I usually add tan to this, my buddy didn't want it. Here is a close-up shot of the pattern just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Once you have your desired pattern done, the next step is just to leave it alone. Just don't touch it. Let it sit for a few days in a warm environment to hopefully cure. I like to leave mine in the backyard just to let it bake in the sun. And in my experience, it really does help the curing process. I usually alternate sides between days and generally leave it outside for about a week or so, and then everything works out. Lastly, you're going to get a little bit of powder or filminess or residual paint that didn't quite stick, and that's completely normal. It's just a powdery finish. Just take an old t-shirt or rag or paper towel, wet it down, and just wipe down your rifle to get all of the powder residue off. At that point, you can do whatever you want with it. Or not, you could just completely skip the curing process and just go straight right into using the rifle. It really doesn't matter, it's your rifle, you do with it what you will. I've just found that the curing process does help the paint stay on a little bit longer and resist the wearing process. This concludes the how to paint tutorial covering M81 Woodland, Multicam Tropic, and Snakeskin pattern. Once again, you don't have to use my colors, you don't have to follow my instructions to a T, just use it as a general guide to help you along your way. Of course, if I missed something or didn't explain something that you require clarification, go ahead and comment below, let me know, I'll do my best to answer as soon as possible. Feel free to leave general comments if you felt like you preferred one pattern over the other, if you tried it yourself, or you have any tips for others, feel free to leave me below. If you found this information useful, please do hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, but you found this information useful, please do subscribe for additional content. Also, remember to share this video with anyone who you think it could help or could use the information. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for watching. Bunny Operator signing out.